All right, and welcome to the Identity Podcast. That's right, the Identity Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Caleb, along with my fellow lovely co-host, Tarek. He's here. Woo.
Woo!
Some new little things with our intro videos and even outro videos as well. Very excited to for tonight's show. What about you, Tarek?
I'm ready, man. I'm ready to go. I know a lot of people are probably missing our original time, but I'm glad that you guys are still tuned in. If you are live, definitely support us with some comments. Let us know where you are, what's going on, what's new. Welcome February, and with a new world. New year, new everything. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I'm excited, man, and I'm ready for our guests for sure.
Me too. Can't wait. And we are just about to introduce them. Very excited. On Religion series finale, part 2. Again, the Identity Podcast, brought to you by Find Your ID NYC. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Find Your ID NYC and check us out on Instagram by the same name. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page, The X Shows, and you can follow the Identity Podcast on our own personal pages on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at the Identity Podcast as well. As always, check out the Identity Podcast on all streaming platforms. We're pretty cool. We're on all streaming platforms now. I say we made it. We made it.
We made it.
We made it. But if you love the Identity Podcast and do want to sponsor us, please email us at press@findyourdnyc.com, and we'll talk about you possibly sponsoring the podcast. And we now have merch, which is pretty cool. And you can check out the podcast on Brick Media. Check out the merch on our bios. You can find the link in our bios on our Instagram and Facebook pages on Teespring. Really cool stuff. But let's go ahead and get into the show. That's right. On Religion series finale, part 2. Our guest. Who might our guest be, you may ask? Well, our first guest is none other than Professor James Lynch. How's it going?
Fantastic. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Well, it is an absolute honor to have you on again and to be able to do this finale part 2 and to just continue to do this podcast and to have your wisdom. We were talking beforehand, and I think I mentioned to you just about how we needed to save the wisdom for the show because there were so many great things that was being brought up, and I wanted to write down every single thing. But we're very grateful to have you on again, Professor James, and let's go ahead and introduce our next guest, none other than Medina TV, Mehdi and Mubina. It looks like Mehdi just joined us. How's it going, everyone?
Woo! Right on time, man.
Hi, guys. Good to see you all.
You too.
So I don't know if you got a chance to meet this Professor James Lynch as well.
No.
We were all talking behind the scenes, but yeah, welcome, man. Welcome back, everybody. Medina TV in the house, Canada.
It's a pleasure. Well, thank you for Lynch as well.
Say it again.
I'm just saying it's a pleasure to meet you, Professor Lynch, and to see you guys again.
Yeah, man, we're about to do bios, so you'll get a chance to meet him for sure. But I mean, I'm so happy about both of your episodes for sure, Caleb, right? I mean, we had to get these two guests together for sure. So yeah, I think we can start off with bios, man. I don't know. Do you want to talk first, or we can just kind of wing it? I know you just got out of work, so I appreciate you giving us this time, man.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you want to get settled, we'll just chat a little bit. So basically, we brought our finale series back together. Me and Caleb brainstormed and came together, and I appreciate everyone's availability. We were trying to get a little more guests, but I know that this room is going to be filled with so many wonderful thoughts. Sometimes it can get a little cluttered with too many people, so I think 2 is perfect. Well, 3, because we have 3 different perspectives today, even though there's 2 cameras. I'm sorry. The main thing that we wanted to get in, at least to just start this conversation off, and show some similarities between the 2, are conversion. And that's something that, what's up? Someone's here for Mehdi and Mubina, right? Okay. That's perfect. So I wanted to say, let's just start with conversion. And this is the topic that actually Caleb chose to start off with. So we can just start there. And, you can give yourself a little bit of bio from there at that point, just so Professor Lynch can kind of figure out who you are, where you're coming from, Mehdi. And then we'll just go from there. Because I guess please check out those other episodes. We'd definitely like to see that, see some more people go back and rehash stuff. I've seen some people sharing our stuff, so we appreciate that as well. So intro out the way. Let's jump on in. So
Sure.
let's talk about conversion, man.
So is this specifically like religious conversion?
honestly, if you want to take that topic and run with it, you're brilliant enough for that. This is the end of the On Religion series, but because it's a finale, we can open this up to a lot of different things.
Okay.
Yeah, conversion, kind of just meeting your wife, and maybe just conversion, culturally, a lot of different stuff wherever you were gonna go with it, man. Just
Sure.
enlighten us, please.
Yeah, for sure.
Inshallah.
I would say like the main conversion that's taking place in my life is my religious conversion. I became a Muslim. I was actually born into a Christian family, so that's all I knew for most of my life. And then when I went to university, that's when I met her. And it was actually only 10 minutes away from where I lived. And there were like, there's so many Muslims at the school, and I never even met Muslims, even though I was like in a small town, like just 10 minutes away. And then after seeing their character and everything, I got kind of interested in learning more about Islam. And then I spent some months studying it further. And then I just felt like I could answer some of the questions that I always had. And I just spent time researching, eventually started implementing some of the teachings of Islam into my life. And then I became a Muslim. It was actually on Father's Day in 2018. I came back from my parents' house, and then I actually converted that same day.
Wow.
And it wasn't just a religious conversion, it was also a conversion of the mindset too, because only I know what he was like before his conversion. My family doesn't know, my friends don't know, but basically he was a very, very different person. So I feel like Islam really changed him, like not just the religion, but just the fact that, he was studying something about peace. He was studying something that felt like it was adding more structure to his life, and that really did change him.
Yeah, for sure. I would just add to that is that I actually came from, of course, Christianity doesn't teach to, disrespect any other religion or anything. Just my family had certain values that were against Muslims. So I actually grew up almost like Islamophobic. I would just think of what like the media about Muslims, and that was my whole mindset on it. And it took years. Like we worked together for several years, and then she never pushed Islam on me or anything, but whenever I would hear about it, I would just like reject it because I didn't think it was right. But then over time, I started learning more about it, and through my own research, I just changed my own perspective on it.
I mean, just a year before he converted, he told me he was never ever going to convert to Islam.
Yep.
So.
Wow. You said a year ago?
Pardon?
You said that was a year ago?
No, that was a year before his conversion. Like
year before his conversion. Okay, yeah.
Summer before, I said, "There's no way I'm ever going to convert."
Wow, a solid year. Never say never, man.
Yeah, I told him that you should never say never.
Never say never, bro. You might end up, flying a plane or something. I don't know. You might actually be testing the universe. Be like, oh, you can't do this? Here we go. I was actually gonna joke, I'm sure at this point, now that you guys are so famous for this, you have to tell this story so many different times, but I appreciate you always bringing a fresh approach to it. I just wanted to make a quick joke, like, man, where did you get the beard oil? I need one, man. I need to keep it nice and oiled up. I'm just bothering you. But no, has that been a part of your conversion too? Growing your hair out, maybe wearing different clothes and stuff?
The clothing doesn't really change. The only thing is with the clothing, we have to make sure, try to keep it modest. It really is the same. It's just, you'll notice, we keep a beard because our Prophet, peace be upon him, kept a beard. And that's part of our identity as Muslim men. It's just natural, and it's a way of distinguishing ourselves between men and women. Natural for men to keep a beard. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, also covered his head as well. So that's something I actually started implementing only just a few months ago. I started doing it.
I don't know if his head was covered the last time we were here, but
yeah, it might not have been covered last time I met you guys. So.
It's funny now that you're mentioning it. It does kind of ring a bell. I do remember you talking about changing, but I didn't realize how recent it was. But now I see how full your beard is, and now I see that the time is coming.
I don't think he had a beard even before his conversion.
I did. It might have just been shorter, by coincidence.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
Like
well,
the first time I ever saw him, he had a beard.
Okay.
It was patchy, but it was a beard.
That's wonderful. Let's switch over to Professor James Lynch for a minute. So, how was conversion for you? Unless you want to talk to them. This is an open format.
First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing.
I don't have to moderate.
Yeah. I want to say thank you for sharing your story. As I write down notes because I'm a professor and I'm getting older. I'm older than both of you combined, so I have to, so that my memory's not as good. But I thought it was a beautiful story. First of all, the fact that your love and respect for your wife moved you on a path of righteousness, right? So that was really amazing, and how you've taken that mantle up. And so that's really what those things, I wrote down, you're a righteous man now as a result of the love that you have, And so, I think that, so I wanted to say thank you, first of all, for that, for sharing that, because that motivates me and moves me, actually. So many times we don't have that love in our lives, and people are looking for that, right? And, right. My own, I would say, I don't like to call it, I call it ongoing journey. My ongoing journey. I have people in my family who are Muslims. I have people in my family who are Christian ministers. I come from 3 generations of Christian ministers on both sides of my family. And really, I consider, Buddhism and Buddhist practice is not, make sure people understand, you don't worship the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
You worship a man. That's not what you do. What the Buddhist practice is to say we suffer, and there are ways of addressing our life so that we can be happy and bring happiness to others. That's really Buddhism. So the practices that people do, and they sit down and they meditate and they do things, it's about not happiness in a hedonistic way. That's very important, because again, I'm wearing this thing. I'm not wearing this all the time. Right? The whole idea of Buddhism is, like you were saying before, Mehdi said, in a way to be modest, right? The whole idea of modesty and interaction with other people and making them feel comfortable in the interaction, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say that Buddhism was a way for those people who may be listening, few or many, it doesn't matter. We're just having a dialogue amongst ourselves. Jesus says, love ye one another as I've loved you, right? How do you do that? How do you do that? Someone comes and hurts you, hurts your family, hurts your loved one, your children, your wife, your family. You say, hey, I'm getting my axe. I'll do my prayers later, but I'm going to handle my business right now. That's the reality. So how do we love those that want to harm us? And in a world where there's constant violence around us, how can we be people of peace? Right? Muslims greeting, right? Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. Right?
Yeah.
Right? How can we be those people? And that journey made me say, I have violence inside of myself. I have anger inside of myself. How can I take care of that anger? How can I take care of that violence so I can be a righteous man and be a person who brings peace to others? So it's not superficial, but it's coming from you. So that's really what Buddhism is. If you want to call it a conversion, I don't know. I think it's part of the journey, like a stream. And the reason that's for Buddhists, I think for a real Buddhist, I say a real Buddhist. Some people are like call a coffee table Buddhist, right?
Right. Zen talk, right? Yoga.
They can do the postures and stuff like that. The next thing you know, they're cursing at somebody 2 minutes later, right? But for a person who's really going to take up the mantle, just like a person, and I love that your husband said, 2 months ago, I wasn't wearing something garb for my head. It means he's walking the path. That's powerful. And so that's what a Buddhist wants to do, walk the path. And if you're walking the path, then that's your conversion experience. That's
indeed.
Not because you say and put on a name makes you. Malcolm X had a famous line. He said, "You could put a kitten in an oven; it doesn't make it a biscuit." Just because you say something doesn't make it so. It's what you do and how you act and who you become. What you become through your actions and your devotion, right? So that's my conversion experience. It doesn't have to be any long-winded things. 3 minutes. That's it.
That's wonderful, man. You have something to say, Mehdi?
I was just curious because I know in Islam, like we have a certain process. The conversion process is pretty simple. Like we say the Shahada, where we bear witness that there's only one God and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final last messenger. But in Buddhism, is there any process? Because you mentioned is there any sort of statement?
You basically said that it's like an experience when you're going through the process. and when you start taking on the actions and starting to implement the actions.
It's interesting.
I think that what happens is, you know, some people that will say the three treasures of the Buddha, you know, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. What is it? The Buddha, the teachings of the truth of the universe, and the community of believers. Very familiar, right? The same idea. So, but the idea again, when we say the Buddha, we're saying, again, it's not to worship the Buddha. You don't worship a man. You don't worship a man. What you do is you have high veneration, respect you. If you had your father or mother was a wise individual and they guided you on the right path, then you would have respect for them.
Right.
Yes.
And you would act accordingly, right?
Yes.
That's what you do for the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
You say thank you, and you remember that he guided you on a path so that you will not suffer and that you will not be a cause of anyone else's suffering. So, you know, so I think that the early Buddhists used to be, they leave their families, or they were basically wandering monks. That's really what they would go out. They was all a practice. You'd go out and beg for food. Why would you beg for food? People say, why would you beg for food? To show your humility. It takes a lot. Think about it right now. If we were to go to or knock on our neighbor's doors and put our hands out and say, please feed me, all of a sudden your ego has to go. I think that the great life God, Allah, whatever you want to use the phrase would be, you say, my life is dependent upon the greatness of the universe. I can do nothing but through your actions. That's Buddhism.
That's awesome. Yeah, that. I mean, I don't know if that directly answered your question, Mehdi, because I know that there's a bit of a structural process that may do, but I love that it's just so open. The way James explains it, it's just this process, you know, and there's levels to enlightenment. That's the way I like to always describe it. And as much as there's not levels, there's no physical place or no one's higher than other one. But along your process, you're enlightening. And he often speaks about the path. And, you know, you had a fork in your road at some point where you could have continued upon your Father's Day's tradition, which is ironic that you changed on Father's Day, or go your own route, or let alone the route that was meant for you, rather. It may not be, you know, in Buddhism, they don't really take ownership of stuff, but the route that was presented and you took it, you know. I don't know. I guess my question is just to dig a little deeper, Professor Lynch. Is there like a process to be a part of your community? Like how does that actually work?
It's very inexpensive. If you want to be a member, you come in and you do the prayers and you really do meditation. And you know it costs a lot of money. It costs $12 for the year. So there's no man of tithing and stuff like that. But the idea, the real challenge to be a member of the community is that you're going to have to confront your ego. Your idea that you're the boss and you're going to make the decisions, and humble yourself so that you're available to the universe so that you can be loving.
I love it.
And to be loving.
I love that.
Passionate or kind when it's not convenient. Be kind when it's convenient. It's when it's inconvenient that you reveal your true nature. So that's where I think it's, you know, it's really an investment in you. It's in you. It's a miracle that we have life. It's a miracle. We didn't do anything to gain it. We didn't say pay $5 or $500 million and we got life. It's a miracle that we have it, and we should act accordingly. That's what Buddhism is saying. Let's honor the miracle process.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I was gonna kind of go along this. Professor Lynch keeps mentioning about this humility, and it seems like that's kind of the biggest part of what I've enjoyed about the religion series and the finale that we're going through right now. I've realized like very humble people, but all of them are very spiritually strong and very powerful. And I attest to the guests that are here, Mubina, and everyone that's with us. So I really feel that you know, it may have something to do with the beard, it may have something to do with just covering the head, but we've been talking to Hasidic Jews who cover their head, and it always goes back to humility. So I think that, just to, you know, I may be summing up a little bit what Professor Lynch is saying, but I think that this whole begging process and lowering of your ego, or the process to conversion, seems a lot of just like removing self out the way so that you can be a lot, more spiritual. And I think that that's just healthy for everyone to kind of get rid of like who you may think you are at that particular time. And it can constantly change, constantly flux. So, and I also wanted to highlight too, there's a tagline to Caleb, and he can probably go on a little bit. I was supposed to, so we've kind of looked at our demographics as far as our audience, as well as our guests. They kind of split into 3 categories. Did you want to talk about that a little bit, Caleb?
Yeah, so as we've obviously been, trying to grow the podcast, and as we have grown and really started to look at demographics and the different demographics that our podcast has naturally, and even as we've continued to work on it, meshed with, we've noticed that we really mesh with the younger generation, which is it makes sense with the sense of identity, being able to discover who you are. And we have this whole hashtag and tagline for our show that's discover your identity. So we've kind of realized that we have 3 groups, 3 demographics that we can mesh into what the Identity Podcast focuses on and what we're all about. And it was actually the last show that I realized this and had this kind of epiphany of sorts. And what it is the younger generation is all about discover. So we put discover, picture like word art up on the up above me, discover for the younger generation. And we have kind of the middle generation between 30 to 50 of sorts, where it's all about understanding identity. You've kind of discovered yourself. You still are, but you're able to really understand what is happening. And then you have reflecting, and reflecting goes into the 65, 70 plus, anywhere in the older generations. And we have this sense of being able to reflect on who we discovered, who we were, who we identified as, who we do identify as, present tense as well, and being able to have that reflection. And I think Professor James Lynch did a phenomenal job, and always does, at being able to talk about this reflection. And so I think last episode we talked a lot about discovering, and then we were really at the end talking about this understanding.
Right.
So that's this demographic, the demographics, and then this concept has been able to be brought to us by the On Religion series, and has been able to allow us to understand what is happening. And I think overall, something I mentioned last week, and I'll mention again, is we're at a point with the podcast where we're constantly, every week, we're discovering new identities as well. As well as the fans, the listeners, the viewers, we're discovering as well. Mm-hmm. And we're also reflecting. With Tark and I are reflecting every single week. Every week we meet and we do a podcast, we do a show. And so we get to reflect the next week on what we just heard last week. Mm-hmm. And then we also get to discover something new that week. And then in between, we have the in-between phase. And I think that's kind of where this middle age of sorts comes into place. And that, to me, is the most intriguing demographic, is really trying to understand them as they're trying to understand life.
Interesting.
And
that's great. that's the tagline right there, man. And I know a lot of people have stuff to say to that. I see this as, I made a joke with him, and I was like, isn't that a little bit ageist? You're kind of putting them into different categories. But he was like, no, it's not that at all. And the reason why I say that, Caleb, not to interrupt you, but is I feel like we're constantly going through this, no matter how old you are. And I know everyone can attest to this. You're going through this idea of discovery, understanding what you just discovered and reflecting it, and then repeat. The master zero of Buddhism is the fact that we all come from where we began and start again. So I brought that up, just to say that I appreciate, your path, where you are and where Professor James Lynch is, and how much all of us can kind of come together as the youth is discovering who they are. They're showing themselves. Maybe we don't understand who we are at 30. And those that have gone upon this spiritual journey, not to say, you have to be 65, you can be well into your spiritual journey, at 30 as well. But now you're reflecting upon, wow, I've done so much in this particular field. Maybe I missed something. And I think that's just kind of where I wanted to kind of go at. So definitely ask him questions. I'm sure he's going to ask you questions. This is an open forum. Everyone is just here to learn with each other. So I'm so happy to be here with you, for sure.
I was going to ask you too, Do you agree with what Caleb was saying, that you feel you're in the discovery phase of where you're at in your lives? Do you feel that that's what's happening? I mean, I still feel you guys are newlyweds. That's a beautiful thing. I still feel that way. Do you feel that, you're in the discovery phase of your life and in your faith?
That's a good. You want to go first?
Yeah, I think we are. I've known him for so long and I'm still discovering how he is at home because a lot of it changes once you get married.
Mhm.
I knew him as a classmate before, and then I knew him as someone I wanted to potentially get married to, and then I knew him as like this fiance guy who's in between like my husband or and then now I know him as my husband, and like it's still like every time it just changes and changes and changes. You think you know a person really, really well, and then you realize, ew, I didn't know that about him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think, are you discovering stuff too about me?
100%. I think it's not just with you. I think just overall, and I think like we're both in our, I guess now approaching late 20s now. We're always learning new things. I was even talking with I actually haven't spoken to my parents on the phone for over 2 years because when I converted to Islam, they never accepted it, and they're still we didn't have the best conversation a few days ago. But they were like, "Why are you changing your religion? You're born Christian. That's what." They were even telling me, I refuse to accept you're a Muslim. You're going to stay Christian, and that's it. You can't change your religion. And I was like, but you can change your religion, right? Like things can change. You learn, if you're an open-minded, you can learn new things. I feel like if someone's like more closed-minded to new ideas, they're just going to stay stuck in the same mindset. I think it's always good. And even in our religion, we're taught, you're always supposed to learn more about other religions. So if we have the opportunity to learn about Buddhism right now, I've always been curious to learn about that, right?
Yeah.
I've read about it. I've taken some courses that talked about it, but just to hear more about that is just amazing. It's how we also can learn how to respect others as well and their beliefs. It's really important. So
I think just learning stuff like that from a person that actually, practices it versus just reading it in books is different. Yeah. There's a lot of differences. Even though like the fact that we're on social media, actually, we thought that, there wouldn't be a lot of like Muslims on social media, but there are. And not just that, but there are so many other religious groups that we are discovering every day. And it's fascinating because we get to learn more about them. And a lot of them are actually coming forward now on TikTok. A lot of the religious couples are coming up and talking more about their religion, which is so cool.
Like we recently were following this Jewish couple.
I love them.
And they're answering, they're awesome. And they're answering all these questions I've always been curious about because I've worked with Jewish people, known Jewish people, but just to learn more about the faith, they don't talk about it sometimes as much.
A lot of them are reserved. That's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of them are reserved. They don't talk about their faith openly. But I love that we have a platform here where we can actually, share our faiths, talk about our faiths in a very respectful way. I just love that.
And a lot of it shows how similar we actually are. We think we're all different because we're labeled different religions, but we're actually quite similar in a lot of ways.
At the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is to be kind people. So.
Indeed.
I think what they're saying. No, I was going to say it's beautiful what they're saying. So much wisdom that they're saying there. So non-judgmental, open-hearted, so like the prophet, peace be upon him, would ask you to do. So many wonderful stories. For me, one of my favorite stories, I know they'll know the story. My favorite story about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is there was a woman who used to attack him every day. He'd walk down the street and she would attack him and say bad things to him all the time. And then he was walking down the street and she wasn't there because she was sick. And then he went to see her and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed you. I missed you today." And she becomes a Muslim, right? Mm-hmm. She converts, and that's the essence of our humanity, right? Mm-hmm. Someone else's life and they can feel your sincerity, even though she was mean to him, right? She was mean, disrespectful to him. She converts. And I think that's really the, I'm so glad I'm in this group. You said discovery, understanding, and reflection. I'm not in the last group of tombstone. That's what I was thinking about, tombstone. Like the person is like, no longer going to be there, right?
Oh, Caleb. I told you it's ages.
I really thought what Mehdi was saying was really important when he said, and then his wife, Medina, picked up on it, I had written down on my notes here, I said, at one level, we're very diverse. And then I said, at another level, we're one with the great life of the universe that the infinite intelligence, Allah has ordained for us to be here. It's a beautiful thing. We're not here by accident. Not a coincidence that we're here.
Definitely. Because I was engaged to someone else before, and then I ended up marrying my husband. So definitely, you know, everything's written down. And one thing I would really like to add to the story that Professor James Lynch just mentioned is that I've noticed with the meanest of people, you can turn them into the kindest people if you just, you know, act kind to them. Because sometimes all they really need is someone that actually cares. And they're just too afraid to tell the world that that's what they need. That someone who actually cares. My husband wasn't mean, but he wasn't the best. Like, he wasn't the most loving towards the religion of Islam. And so the only thing that I could really show him was my actions. That's it. I didn't want to push my religion on him. I didn't want to push anything on him. So all I could really show him was my character. And even though he would say a lot of things that I don't want to repeat, I would still be like, you know, it's fine. That's your opinion. Think what you want. And I think that really did that change you in any way?
I would definitely say in general, if someone comes to you and they're having an issue, I think empathy and having compassion is really important. Even just now when I was at work having clients having difficulty who are angry and frustrated, if you just stay patient, sometimes you can turn that situation around and they really appreciate it. So just kindness goes a long way, and being patient. The person, yeah, like you said, with in her case, she never pushed religion on me. I would always reject it, but just seeing the character and the patience of the Muslim people, it just gave me a different perspective, and I felt like I was cared about in a lot of instances.
I did break a lot of your stereotypes in your mind too. You used to think niqabis or the women that cover themselves could not work.
Or that the man forces her to cover her face. My family still we're on the phone the other day. It's like, what man is forcing her to cover her face? I'm like, no one. She wants to wear it. It's her choice.
And it's funny now because on social media, people think he forces me to cover my face.
I get accused of that all the time, or that I converted just to get married for her. So
oof. It happens, man. You're gonna get all of these type of things, and like the story, I really enjoy that. It almost sounds like a Buddhist story, and I do feel like a lot of the prophets have like very similar stories. But yeah, just like you're gonna get these trolls, man. But I feel like in the age of technology, it's like trolls are almost your biggest supporters now than people that don't care at all. People that don't care at all aren't watching your content. They aren't saying anything. Not to say I invite negativity into me. You know, you definitely have to have boundaries. But it's something about it, you know, think about even the president that's out of here nowadays. Like, you know, this is somebody that like grew the hate and grew this type of energy and used it. Like, I don't think he's a hateful person, but he knew how much power was in that. And he used it as a weapon. And I think that's where it kind of falls into a bigger issue. Not to get too much into politics, but now we're seeing the opposite of someone using peace and unity as a weapon and of a sort to kind of like batter people down, which I don't necessarily agree with either. But that is what it is. But I do hear that. And I wanted to make a comment just from listening to you. So Mobina said that she was pretty empathetic and kind with you. And how much of that juxtaposes to how you would experience religion in your own home and how your family have been treating you about just being, you know, because I can just see a little bit in your face about how tough that may be. And we revisited that last episode. So it's ironic that now you've had this conversation with your family and how much that kind of, you know, it's kind of puts a little strain on the heart sometimes, because obviously you love Mubina, but you also love your family and they're not allowing that to be. So I'm curious, like, since we are on religious conversion, though I do feel like I kind of want to change this word, because this idea of converting almost seems like you have to become anew or change. And I think you didn't deny your old identity, you know. We laugh about your name too. So Professor Lynch, we made a joke before, because not only did he convert, he changed his name as well. And he has been identifying as that, which brings its own vibrational frequency as well. And I'm sure sometimes when your parents call you, they probably call you your old name. You know, they bring back this old energy. They don't call you that.
I understand that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a long-winded question, but just to bring you up to speed of kind of what I was thinking about, I think that you know, you had associated a lot of, and it seems like parts of your family is very big on just like, okay, this is what it is, and we're not going to push past our boundaries. And I think a lot of families over, whether they be of Muslim descent or wherever they come from, things have been in trajectory for a long period of time for you to say, okay, I'm not doing this for anyone else, not Jesus, not no one. I'm doing this for my spiritual faith. And I think that's why I love that we have Professor Lynch here, that he can like talk to you about that, because like he just said, he comes from a long line of Bible thumpers, let's be honest, and I also have some, pastors as well. And you can hear it in the way he teaches as well, but you can see that he also sought out his own faith. And so that, I just wanted to show you that, there is a way. And so that's why I wanted to jump in to kind of ask Professor Lynch, how do you talk to someone who's of a different religion, different mindset? How do you even connect to them in a way that they can feel that they're understood, especially family members?
I think you heard from Abina and heard from Eddie,
Yeah, you're right.
You have is you give out the love, you give out the compassion, you plant the seeds of compassion in the other person. And when the conditions are right, the universe, I'll use the term Allah doesn't play dice games. In Buddhism, they say causes plus conditions equals outcome. In the human world, all we can do is what we do, right? So if you give compassion out to your family, they may not change right away, but their hearts will soften. They can't help themselves. They won't be able to see how he's smiling. You won't be able, they see that wonderful smile on his face. No, I don't like it. He's nice, but I don't like it. I don't like it. His wife is kind, but eventually they're going to have to change, because the cause, which was their fear, isn't being watered. And therefore, what we had was poison can actually become medicine. Which was poison before will be the medicine to cure them. The very act of saying, I don't like Islam, you say, I actually like that he's a Muslim. He's much kinder to me than he was, but he's got to respect me. He wasn't like that before. All of a sudden, the very thing that they thought was the negative will turn around and be the positive. But the key thing is that you must keep your shape. You must stick to the path that you've gone on and chosen for yourself. And keep doing what you're doing, the wonderful thing, what a great spouse both of you have. It's not always going to be easy, but if you have each other, then the rest will take care of itself. That's my feeling.
That's beautiful. You guys want to add anything?
No, I think it's true. Like what I like in our religion, like respecting parents is so important. And what I try to do with my parents is I contact them and then I just give them a breather just to take that in, and then I try to contact them again, give them a breather again. And I'm hoping that I haven't noticed a lot of change in the last 2.5 years, but I mean, this could take, who knows, could take 10 plus years. I don't know. So I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. And then just whenever I'm ready, I try to reach out. And then hopefully with time, like Professor Lynch was saying, they'll see that I've changed, hopefully for the better. And then maybe they may not agree with it, but their hearts will soften to it with time.
Much like your heart did.
I was going to say one thing. It's definitely. I was going to say one thing, just to throw it in personal, and they know. And I had told your lovely wife, Lavina, before you came on. I take care of my father. My father has Alzheimer's, and he has dementia. And so, at times in the past, he would sometimes come up and accuse me of things. He would get very upset and say, "How could you do this to me?" But I think the greatest thing you can do is to be present and to be loving. Mm-hmm. Forgive. We don't always have to give people money. That's not only a donation. It can be fearlessness. It can be our compassion. It can be our caring. And that's the gift that you can give to your parents so that their hearts can be changed. Mm-hmm. That's not your job. Your job is to just do what you can do. And they'll change. God will change their heart, to use that phraseology.
Yeah, right now they just feel betrayed because
Right.
the way the conversion happened, like the whole timeline of it was a little bit like I can tell, like I can understand why they would feel like it was a betrayal, because everything happened like
for like a master's graduate program, and then a few months after I converted, and then months after we got married. So they see the whole timeline is happening so quickly. But in our religion, if you know someone, you want to get married to someone, you're not supposed to delay that. And then the conversion And my openness to Islam came because I came from a household where we were supposed to just shut that information out.
Mhm.
I didn't move out. They think I moved out with intention to convert, which I didn't.
Yeah. So I think like in their minds, they already had that, fear that he's moving out because of this. And then they kind of made this whole narrative about how their son moved out. And then a few months later, their fear came true and he converted to Islam.
Like they would say, and you're always studying in your room. I was studying to get into my master's program, but they're like, well, you're probably studying Islam in there too. And I was like, no.
God forbid, right?
Because he's Armenian. He's part Armenian, and their ancestry is like very, very Christian.
Yeah.
Right.
So
because of a lot of the stuff that I think Professor Lynch kind of spoke about, like this, like, you know what, we're taking up arms and we're going against each other, and like, the Crusades are a terrible part of history. Even if we talk about like, black, white, whatever it is, like all these things, like the most people have died for religious persecution or against other religions over time. A lot of it has been cultural. A lot of it has been for the land. A lot of different things are there. And I think the unity that we're creating right now is not as tribal as it used to be. We're not just, our tribes are much more a soul tribe of things. And I feel very connected to all of you here. I've never met everyone, so, I think I definitely hear where it's coming from. And I think that there are some people that are, a little more progressive than others, but a lot of what has been happening for the last few generations, or probably four, have been like, die hard, like this is what we're doing. And our families will die saying these things. And there's probably some ancestors that have passed Christian, and this is what they wanted of their family. Great grandma wanted you to be a Christian, and now you're Muslim. What does that mean for them? And it's like this layer of generational weight that we have to do. But who knows to say that what you're doing right now isn't like kind of cleansing that timeline or connecting to a lot of different aspects of what may actually help them in the future or help others. And that's why I wanted to highlight, not to bring it too much negative or too much focused on your family situation, unless you want to keep talking about that. But think about how many people's eyes you've opened with TikTok, how much more family you're getting now. How many more people feel comfortable to talk about their religion on a social platform? It means a lot. I've always said this: when you're doing something right, you're gonna get haters. I've always said this to people: you're gonna get trolls, you're gonna get stuff. Hopefully, they're not someone close to you. Hopefully, it's not your dog or somebody that just doesn't love you anymore. It's supposed to be man's best friend, but now I'm Muslim. You don't want to talk to me? What's going on here? No. But I think that all jokes aside, I think that it's just healthy to be understanding. And I think that's what everyone's kind of talking about. I do see where they're coming from. That's why I'm giving you this other perspective, like this fire and hell and brimstone of like, why are you doing this? You're going straight to hell. Like, you know what I mean? And I've been there. I've had all of these religious death threats of sorts, and I get it. And I think what I learned was this is their faith. And this is how they move in their life. And what am I to knock that? I think that where I've come from in life are from their religious walks or their journeys. And now I'm there where I need to be to convert for, your children coming up, because that's the next generation that's coming up. Let's be honest. And I know I didn't mean to scare you guys, but that's the next move, of course. It's for us to push it on and push it along. And of course, you're going to teach them of your ancestry and your Christian background, but you're going to tell them also when you converted and how. And that's where the timeline changes. Prophet Muhammad wasn't a Muslim. Jesus wasn't a Christian. They started somewhere, So, that's all I wanted to say. But.
It's very important. I was thinking as I didn't know that Mehdi's ancestry was Armenian. I had a teacher who actually survived the long march that they went through. So that's interesting. That may be part of it. It's interesting that you bring up part of their fear, that all of history is being let go rather than being unfolded in a more dynamic future. That's really in your hands that you have to let them see.
Yeah, that's for sure. Armenia is a country that's surrounded by all Muslim countries, and there was 1915 an Armenian genocide, which took place by government of Turkey, and then they are a Muslim country, but our belief is that they claim to be Muslim, but the way they're acting is not in accordance with what Islam teaches. And I try to explain to my family, but they associate us as one and the same when we're not.
And I would like to tell everyone that, there are bad people and good people in all religions. It's not the religion's fault. that the people are like that. It's the fact that they just took the information the wrong way. And like no one should be blaming anyone's religion for teaching them these types of values, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism. Like that's not what the religion isn't what causes people to be bad. All religions teach peace, as far as I know.
Yes.
They do.
The power of the religion, I feel, is, as opposed to saying you're just doing good things sometimes, is that at its core, it has the power to change you psychologically. It has the power to change one's heart and mind. You know, so sometimes people say, I'm just going to learn some philosophy books. No, what ends up happening, there's actually a transformation that takes place in the practitioner, Buddhism, or the believer in Islam. They become transformed. They're not the same person that they were before. You know, and that's a very powerful distinction. And it's one that's actually lost in sometimes in the modernity that we have. We have throwaway sodas, throwaway relationships, you know, fast, you know, on to the next, realizing that, however, there's something behind that, that's greater than that. So that's when you see Mehdi's transformation. What you're seeing is a transformed individual. His wife points it out. He's not the same person he was before. That's a power of religion.
Exactly. I would say more spirituality instead of religion.
Yes.
What we believe is Islam is not a religion, but a way of life. And the way Professor Lynch is talking, it seems like Buddhism is a way of life too, because you basically have to live it, and the whole experience is part of your conversion. So I feel like Islam is very similar in that way, where we basically live it every day. Because you can't just call yourself Muslim if you know like anyone can call themselves Muslim as long as they have the belief, right? But to live Islam is what we believe is the true spiritual thing for us.
Yeah,
it's when we practice it every day, and that's when we're actually practicing the spirituality aspect of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to bring up a note. If anyone got a chance to see this, I think it's called "Once Upon a Time in Miami" or something like that, or Florida. I may be butchering the title, but basically it's about the night that Muhammad, before he was Muhammad, Cassius Clay, won the. Did you get a chance to see it, Professor?
Muhammad Ali is one of my idols, so therefore I'm a little better than you guys combined. That's on the podcast combined. So yeah,
that's what we have, you man. We need all of that. Like we need your wisdom.
I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know the incident and everything that they took it from. It used to be a play, and I haven't seen it. I've been saving it for the weekend. But I've actually.
Oh yeah, so I won't ruin it. But you know, obviously it's historical. But some parts of it are not fictitious, but they've played from parts of their lives, and the conversations that are happening are very awesome. Anywhere from secularism and not being able to really, you know, impact people in a certain way, or, you know, Malcolm X's overzealousness with Islam sometimes, and maybe him trying to come back to being a little more human, because he's a convert. At the end of the day, he wasn't born into it. So he's always, like he said, kind of going through something that Mehdi was going through, of this conversion thing. And that's what I wanted to highlight. So there's a point that highlights, and we all know this, that Cassius Clay becomes Malcolm X. Cassius Clay becomes Muhammad Ali. Yeah. I'm making a joke because at some point he wanted to be Muhammad X or something like this, which is very funny. He didn't have a name yet. But so I just say all that to say that there was a point where he had doubt, and they show that doubt in the movie. So I definitely say you should take a look at that. But I just see how Malcolm X's conversion process made him so much of a zealot because of how much it was able to change his life, that he was able to push that onto, and open, and not push it on, that's the wrong word, open it up to Muhammad Ali. And everyone in the friend group kept accusing him of, like, Malcolm, you're pushing this on him. He's a young guy. He's at the height of his career. He doesn't need any of this type of energy. But Muhammad Ali actually came to him. So I think a lot of this is like, the teacher comes when you need. Also, it's going to be some doubts. There are going to be some issues. And he has a lot of doubts. He also calls them Muslims. I think that's how he says it. He always used to say that. He never said Muslim, which I thought was very funny. But if you know him, he's very, well, God bless his soul, but very devout, was very devout after this point in time and ran with it. You know, once it changed his life, it was a full conversion. So since we're talking about the biggest conversions, I think for me, that's been one of my biggest, like, oh, okay, wow, this means so much. And so I'm sure Professor Lynch can tell us a little more.
I'm just going to say, for me, you have to know two things about me, which you don't know. And I didn't say this in the past, but I'll say this on the podcast. One of Malcolm X's lieutenants was my friend's father.
Wow.
I know him. I know him a little intimately, and I spoke to him before he transitioned. I call death transition. So that's my phrase for that.
Copy.
Before he transitioned about 2 years ago, and one of the things I think about Malcolm X that is truly, if you go on the Hajj, they have something there for him still when they're there. What's amazing about Malcolm X is that when he was in prison, and you talk about the conversion process, he couldn't read anymore. He used Islam to go from a place where he was no longer a functionally literate person to he memorized the dictionary, to then he was able to debate people from Oxford to Harvard, all around the world. And he became so disciplined. So that's why you might see him, and you say overzealous, that's why you see that change, because he had been he knew what it meant, and he wanted to stay away from that. So it was very interesting. So when you say about Muhammad Ali, maybe that's why I started learning. It was just fortuitous. But Muhammad Ali too, you know, he was searching for a way to assert an identity that I think in a lot of ways that America had minimized being a person of color.
Indeed. Indeed.
And he saw in Islam, and if you go on the Hajj, you go on the pilgrimage, you see people of all different hues, different races, sitting, praying together.
Mm-hmm.
Very different way than in the United States, where a lot of times people of different ethnicities or racial groups are clustered on their prayer days. It's a fundamentally different way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the conversion process that we can, like Medina was saying before, you know, if it's spirituality, taking up that path, following Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in that way that we, or the Buddha, being kind to each other, that open the doorway for us to transform our lives and our world into something we want. So I love Muhammad Ali, because think about it, if he didn't convert, if he didn't have that character, we wouldn't care about it.
Right.
Let's be honest, yeah.
Right? We wouldn't care about him.
Yeah.
It's because he was a man who of courage, flawed, yes, but a man of tremendous courage, that we could say, that's somebody I can look at and want to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be perfect. That's why people think, oh, he did this. No. The key thing is, you know, you take the good where you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I love those two. Those are two of my iconic figures. They're not Buddhists.
Right.
I'm not Buddhist, but I definitely followed them every step of the way. Every step of the way.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, no shade to Malcolm X. You know, obviously, I don't know if you know. Obviously, my name is Tariq, so my family comes from the Nation of Islam as well, and they're a firm part of that history as well. But I think the reason why I say overzealous, because I think they highlight at a point in his life right before he made that Hajj, where he was very much under Elijah Muhammad. And what a leader to be under, first of all. You know, he had his flaws as well, but he was the man, you know, when it came to stuff. So they just highlighted the fact that at some point he had allowed Islam to kind of like make him a soldier for the Nation of Islam rather than Islam in itself. And I think that that's something we can all kind of come back to, you know, kind of as we come, you know, towards the end of our hour, where, you know, now that we kind of made this conversion, how much of it is, you know, pushed by our family members, our loved ones, you know, what is it for you? What does it mean for you at the end of the day? And that's, you know, that was the ultimate. That's why he kind of not lost his zealousness, but he changed his perspective once he was able to make that Hajj, and he was able to really find Islam for himself. And that's why it's so beautiful that you brought up that statue, because that was such a pivotal point in his life where it was like, A, people were not leaving the country. That's a big thing. And B, he read in the religious text, like, we have to make Hajj. this is something we have to do. And he noticed all of his peers, even some of his leaders above him that were a little higher along the Nation of Islam's rank, had never made Hajj.
Exactly.
And so it started to click for him. And he was like, you know what, I got to do this for me, you know? And that's when that like, you know, dogmatic kind of soldier mentality changed. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to experience much of that because he transitioned right after that due to a lot of other stuff that was going on. So, you know, I think that we would have gotten a very interesting perspective. Maybe he would have been dabbling in Buddhism and so many other different things at that point because he had found out what spirituality meant for him. And if anybody leaves this podcast, you know, obviously we have you guests here who know your journey, but anyone that's been listening or that just kind of tuning in towards the end, I definitely just, you know, implore you to seek out your own soul salvation. And that's a big Christian way they like to say it. But the reality is, like, don't let anyone push you into religion. Don't let anyone do that. Do it for yourself. And when you do it, allow it to create its discipline within you, whether it is, you know, just stick with it and you'll see it start to change. Even in psychology, cognitive behavior therapy, apparently, as far as a habit is concerned or a new talent is concerned, you have to do it for about a month or so. I think I forgot the exact amount of days. And then mastery comes after a certain amount of days as well. And when you look at it from the analytical perspective, it's more physical. It's just like, well, 2 months. Well, 2 months, man, you're pretty much a whole new being. You got new cells, you got new everything. And it's time for you to resonate along that vibration. So never allow them to pull you back into Cassius Clay or Red. You know, that was what they used to call Malcolm X when he was gangbanging and doing all sorts of weird stuff. And he often had this issue where people would kind of pull him back into that. I don't know if you saw the movie Malcolm X, but where he kind of got pulled back into this old world and forced forward into the Islam world or whatever it is. You know, maybe you're just on your path of discovery. Now I'm getting into Caleb's taglines, or your understanding process, or you're reflecting upon something so that you can begin anew. Wherever place you are in, you know, for this finale, I'm just excited to hear everyone's perspective and everything. And we're going to do this again. We're definitely going to do this religion series again for sure. Because I'm just so excited to hear that people are even thinking like that. Like I'm so happy that you were able to meet Professor Lynch, by the way, Mobina, because I don't know if she exhibits more Buddhist qualities than most, but she really does at the end of the day. She's one of the most like loving, giving people, understanding. Like you do break a lot of stereotypes when it comes to Islam. And I think I appreciate your presence. I appreciate you, Mehdi, for always being so vulnerable and such a paramount of strength as well. I know you probably don't see it as that sometimes, but you're very strong. You're a very strong person spiritually to even go through some of the processes that you've gone through. And thank you for coming right off of work. I know you're probably a little tired too. Professor Lynch, you know, you're the man. I could go on and on, but the humbleness in you won't let me. So I appreciate you, James, just for being present with us for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So Caleb, I mean, I know I kind of wrapped it up. I know we all had a lot of stuff to say. Caleb, do we have more time? Can we talk more? Or what are we doing?
Yeah, we can kind of, you know, wrap it down a little bit, kind of slowly start to end the show here. But yeah.
Well, does anyone have any last questions, any taglines, anything coming up new? Any fun stuff?
Any fun stuff?
Well, I mean,
no fun stuff. I look how you look at your wife for fun stuff.
work.
That's me if I'm married. I'm like, fun stuff. I don't have to work.
Like
religious stuff, you know.
That's something we're planning on doing.
Yeah, we've been really enjoying this whole experience of like the YouTube, TikTok, and everything. Like you're saying, we hopefully, inshallah, we can do full time at some point.
Yeah.
But we're just right now we're just busy working and just taking it day by day.
Very busy. You probably noticed because I'm so sorry, but we took forever to get back to you guys.
Yeah, we apologize for that.
No worries.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're here. And that's what matters. Like, there's no coincidence. I think Professor Lynch kind of made that comment. Like I said, you know, we wanted this to be a big symposium of conversations and religions, boosting, boom. But a lot of this is superficiality, and a lot of this is like, just how we got you guys on. Like each guest that we've got, not a scramble, but at the end of the day, we didn't know who we were gonna get. You know, and it's been so beautiful to see how everything is connected along the way. And the conversations that both of you had, me and Caleb really took a seat back. You know, we got a chance to speak a little bit throughout this episode, but the reality is that we wanted you guys to meet, and it doesn't matter who is on or whatever it is. Your story is infinite, and we can literally talk for hours and hours. That's why I'm sorry if I had to like kind of cut us all off and make it succinct and package it into an hour. But people lose interest after an hour, so that's the only reason why. But I can talk to you guys forever, that. And everyone that's on our podcast, this is our finale, so we go a little longer. So we appreciate you for sticking by and stuff. I don't know, Professor Lynch, you have something to say? Or?
I just wanted to say thank you both for sharing your journey. I'm going to, I teach classes, obviously, and I think a lot of students would resonate with what you're doing. So I'm going to highlight what you're doing in my classes. And I think it needs to be said because you have a wonderful balance, you have a loving relationship. It's really beautiful to see. It's very important. So many times people, and that's not the story that they're trying to tell people is possible. So you're telling people what is possible. And that's a beautiful thing. Really thank you for this. You said, right? Identity podcast, right? You're giving people a chance to discover who they are and who they can be.
Right.
Thank you too very much for this opportunity. And I won't forget it. Thank you.
Oh man, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, letting us learn about Buddhism too.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think we would have really learned much if we hadn't come here.
Like hopefully
we would have eventually in the future,
more.
but like not this soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean he's a wonderful resource, man. Like huge resource. Definitely check out some of his stuff. He didn't go too much into his accolades today. I mean, a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff he's doing, and this is taking a lot of time out of his day. And I'm joking, but you do a whole lot, and I appreciate you taking this time with us. I think I just wanted to introduce people to the peace team as well that you're working on, so we can invite people to that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the New York Peace Team, we're doing active bystander intervention. We're doing things like in conjunction with the DC Peace Team. You saw the Capitol foray, thing that happened last week. We said there to try and help people to have a different way of interacting with each other, nonviolent communication, religious lines with Islamic, Christian, Buddhist, and Quaker communities coming together and figuring out ways to be loving to each other. So I think it's really exciting.
Indeed.
That's it.
It's awesome, man. And definitely check out their TikTok. They're going to be putting out some new videos at Medina TV. It's also on YouTube. Check them out there. Yeah, new stuff coming up. I just love, I love their relationship, man. It just brings so much joy, and I know you bring so many people joy by doing that. So even if you guys have issues with each other or whatever, that's between y'all. But as far as we're concerned, this is the most blessed union that we've had, inshallah, on our show. So we appreciate you guys so much. Yeah, so that's it for me. Caleb, you want to do the thing?
Do the thing. Well, I would just like to say thank you, everyone. Seriously, goodbye on Religion series for now, but not forever, because I promise you we are going to come back with this, and we have lots of things in mind in the future, in the works, and we'll talk to everyone who's been on the show and more guests that we can invite and welcome for the On Religion series in the future for different identity exclusive content and stuff like that as well. But I just like to say, I know Tark had his little thank you. I just like to say thank you. I like to say thank you for everyone. I like to say thank you for this life, for everything that it has given me, especially with this podcast. I'd like to say thank you to Tark. I'd like to say thank you to for being just the greatest co-host anyone can ask for. I've done co-host, the co-host gig and everything with several people, and it's when you can find that right connection with someone, you can really go a long way. And so I don't think that this show nor the series would be anywhere where it's at today if it wasn't for Tariq. And I hope he can say vice versa as well. But it means a lot. It means a lot. And having Professor James Lynch on every single time, I always end up having just notes of different quotes and everything that he says, because everything is so insightful, and it's just so much wisdom is laced into every word. And at the same time, it's so true. And that's what I love. And that's what I loved about this show. Last week, I felt like we really had this voice. We found this voice. We found this ability to discover, understand, and reflect. And then this week, we were able to take that and be able to just tell the truth and have the truth be throughout everything that we did. And with Mehdi and Mubina, we were able to have that same sense. We were able to discover more of you two and your relationship and everything that has happened, from converting to simply just discovering yourself. And as both of you said, you're both continuing in that discover phase. And to clarify, I don't want it to be ageist in any sort of way. I bring this up, and I'm not saying it has to be that way. I'm simply just saying that for most people, that is where it is. It kind of, I guess, a stereotype of sorts. But I think we all have that, where we discover, we understand, and then reflect. And I think simply just understanding that that's where most of our demographic is at is important. And that's exactly where I will leave us and wrap up this show. And I appreciate everyone that has been commenting and everyone that has been tuning in for this show.
Kaylee.
Woo! For the Identity Podcast.
Jess Murphy. She loves you guys.
Yes.
Yeah. She said, I'm hijabi Jess. I don't know.
She also loved the beard oil comment.
Oh, the beard oil joke, yeah.
Well, it really has been an honor here. And so for the Identity Podcast, once again, this is brought to you by Find Your ID NYC. You can check us out on Facebook and on Instagram by the same name. You can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page at The X Shows and the Identity Podcast. You can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, as well at our own pages. Soon to be Instagram as well. Exciting stuff. But you can also check out, as always, check out the Identity Podcast on all streaming platforms. We're out there on all streaming platforms. It's an absolute honor to be out there. And you can also, if you love the Identity Podcast, well, you can sponsor us. Email us at press@findyourIDNYC.com, and we'll kind of have a good chat to see about sponsoring the podcast. And we have Identity Podcast merch on Teespring. You can find those links in all of our social media bios, and you can order apparel, mugs, anything like that, socks, fanny packs. Even if you're into fanny packs, you can order one of those if you're planning on going on a trip or something. Fanny pack, they really do work. You can buy a Identity Podcast sponsored fanny pack, which is pretty cool. But again, this has been the On Religion series, episode 25 to be exact, finale part 2, featuring Mehdi Mubina and of course Professor James Lynch. It has been a time. I wanted to think of something so insightful and full of wisdom, and at the same time I think I received it more than being able to say it. And that right there is a blessing on its own. And I have a note card full of amazing quotes that I'm going to put in my mind and I'm going to have by my side forever. It really has been, it's been an honor, and you've been listening to and watching the Identity Podcast. We'll catch you next week, next Wednesday, as we start up our brand new series, Environmentalism. And then by March, we're going to kind of segue into sustainability and such, but very excited. Next week's show, very exciting stuff. Will not be live, but we will have a show at the same time. Cannot wait for next week's show as we tackle not only February, wow, crazy to think it's already a second month of 2021, but also a brand new topic. Tark, are you ready? It's a brand new topic. Do we know what to talk about besides religion anymore? I mean, we've talked about it for so long now.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna bring in a lot of, see what I like about the show, and not to keep going too long, but the fact of the matter is that we keep building. So every episode we learn all of the old episodes, because we've been here since August. So all the people that we've gotten, all the knowledge we've gotten or received, it's just going to come out. It's going to come out naturally. So whether it be climate change, which is where we're going to right now, not climate change in particular, but sustainability, environmentalism, and a larger scope. I guarantee there's going to be a lot of spirituality with that. Most of those people are Buddhists. No, but I do think that a lot of us have different ways to give back to the environment, and we're gonna see how that kind of all plays out. So that should be fun. I also have the link to the merch if you want to show it really quick.
Yeah.
Tote bag. It's by Color Co. Thanks, guys, for that. Quick tote bag. I don't know. We don't normally do sales and stuff, but you know.
That's good.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely love that.
multiple colors as well for each item.
Indeed.
Yes.
Just a mug,
Yeah.
socks.
So,
But
I'm investing in a mug.
yeah. I mean, I guess you guys can get me on record to say if you guys need anything, let us know. We can definitely hook you up. All of our guests get discounts now.
Yeah, no, seriously though, they do, and we'll be sending you that link as well. But yeah, it's been great. And so I leave everyone with discover, understand, and reflect. You know, being able to discover who you are, identity, understand who you are, what makes you you, the path that the universe is taking you down, and then of course reflecting. And no matter what stage, no matter what time period of life that you are in, to just reflect. I do this every single day for about 5 to 10 minutes, is reflect. So thank you for listening, watching to the Identity Podcast. We'll catch you next week. It has been an honor.
Peace.
thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Peace, guys.